My name is Alyssa Bryan, and I never planned to walk into their wedding. But when I saw him, the man who left me for my best friend, standing at that altar, smiling like he'd won, something in me snapped into silence. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the moment I gave him back his ring and handed her a truth she never saw coming. If you're watching this, then you're here for that moment. Stay with me. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever wanted justice without raising your voice. I stood at the back of the church, my heels sinking slightly into the old red carpet. Every pew was packed, faces I hadn't seen in years, dressed in polite excitement, murmuring and smiling under vaulted ceilings that echoed with organ music. The scent of lilies choked the air, and my fingers clenched the white envelope so tightly the paper had bent along the edge. I wasn't supposed to be there, not according to him, and definitely not according to her. But I was. From where I stood, I had a perfect view of his face, my husband's face, as the doors opened and she began her slow walk down the aisle. She looked angelic, wrapped in ivory lace, chin tilted high. Her bouquet matched the floral arch I helped design years ago for our anniversary party. I guess she'd always liked my taste. His smile, the one I used to wake up to, stretched wide, too wide. His eyes didn't scan the crowd. He didn't even flinch. Not yet. But I hadn't moved. Not until they reached the altar. Not until the pastor cleared his throat and began the same speech he gave at our wedding 12 years ago. That's when I stepped forward, slow and deliberate, heels clacking like gunshots on the marble tile. Heads turned, gasps fluttered. A few whispers rose like smoke, but no one moved to stop me. Not even him. He just froze. "Before you say I do," I said, my voice steady, louder than I expected, "you might want this back." I pulled the ring from my pocket. His ring. The one he slipped off his finger the night he walked out. I let it drop into his palm with a quiet finality that echoed louder than the organ's drone. He didn't speak. "And this," I added, holding up the envelope. "It's yours, too." Then I turned to her, to my best friend, my maid of honor once upon a time, and smiled, soft and cutting. "Congratulations, Lily. Looks like you're getting everything you wanted." I didn't wait for them to open it. I just walked back down the aisle, the same one I'd walked 12 years ago full of hope, leaving behind a stunned silence and two people whose perfect day was about to unravel in real time. It didn't start with fireworks, it started with silence. The kind of silence that seeps in slowly, after the late-night texts become shorter, the kisses briefer, and the shared glances vanish like steam on a mirror. Eric and I had been married for over a decade. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least I thought so. We'd built a life in Cleveland, a modest house, a routine, a shared Google Calendar. He worked in tech sales. I taught third grade. We had plans to start trying for a baby again after my second miscarriage, though neither of us had said that out loud yet. Then came Lily. She'd been my best friend since college, the kind you plan matching tattoos with and call at 2 a.m. when your world is breaking. Lily had been there through everything. My mother's passing, my wedding, both of my miscarriages. She'd held my hair back when I cried, brought me casseroles when I couldn't get out of bed. She'd also been in my house, sitting at my kitchen island, laughing at my husband's jokes, pouring his wine. In hindsight, it wasn't a moment that gave them away. It was 1,000 tiny details, the extra smiles, the late meetings, the way her name popped up in his notifications even after midnight. Still, I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't, until the night he came home late, again. And I asked him where he'd been. He didn't lie. He just looked at me, tired and hollow, and said, "We didn't mean for it to happen." That's when I knew. That's also when something inside me went still. Not broken, just quiet. Like when you realize the storm already hit and all that's left is cleanup. He packed a bag the next day, said he was sorry, that he hoped we could all be adults about it. And then he left. Not for a hotel. Not for a friend's place. But for her. The woman who helped me pick out his birthday gifts. The woman who rubbed my back after my D&C. The woman who once whispered, "If he ever hurts you, I'll kill him." Yeah, that woman. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. Just let them go. I figured the silence would protect me. I figured time would scab it all over. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. Because 3 weeks after he left, I missed a period. And 2 weeks after that, a test blinked positive. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell her. I told no one. Not yet. Instead, I made an appointment. Saw the ultrasound. Heard the heartbeat. And felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. The kind of quiet power that grows beneath grief. Because this wasn't just a baby. It was a turning point. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. I wanted to know what kind of man could walk away from a woman grieving his child and slip into bed with her best friend. So I waited, watched, listened. And when the wedding announcement popped up online, a pastel invite with scripted fonts and fake candids, I didn't cry. I called my lawyer, then my doctor. Then I took the test. Not for me, for them. And when the results came in, I sealed them in an envelope. Same one I carried into that church. Same one I dropped at his feet. Not out of spite, out of truth. Because sometimes the truth is the only weapon you need. I didn't look back when I walked out of that church. Didn't need to. But just as I reached the heavy oak doors, a voice cut through the stillness like a blade. "Alyssa, wait." It was Lily, still in her gown. Her face pale. Eyes wide with something between confusion and panic. She was holding the envelope. Shaking. Her mouth opened. And then everything stopped. Before everything crumbled, my life felt safe. Predictable in that comfortable, warm way. Our little 2-story house sat on a quiet street in Lakewood, with a maple tree that turned gold every October, and a porch swing Eric swore he'd replace, but never did, even though I secretly liked its creak. We had Friday night rituals, Thai takeout, half a bottle of wine, curled up on the couch with some crime doc we'd half-watch while scrolling on our phones. Saturdays were for errands and Home Depot runs we never finished. Sundays we made pancakes and stayed in pajamas till noon. I used to think happiness was found in those kinds of routines. Not grand gestures, just quiet consistency. Eric wasn't flashy. He was the kind of man who remembered to fill your gas tank, who never forgot birthdays, who made coffee every morning before I even woke up. People loved him, co-workers, my parents, neighbors. He had a dry sense of humor and a calmness that made you feel anchored, even when things were messy. And Lily? Lily was practically family. She and I had met in a women's lit class at Case Western during undergrad. We were opposites on paper. She was bold, fast-talking, always wore red lipstick, while I was quieter, a planner, someone who found comfort in lists and soft sweaters. But we clicked. She was my maid of honor, the first one at the hospital when I miscarried the first time, the one who helped me paint the nursery that eventually got turned into a guest room. She never married. Claimed she was too busy chasing her marketing dreams. Said she liked her freedom, but she always joked that if she ever settled down, it'd be with someone like Eric, stable, loyal, kind. I thought it was a compliment. Looking back, there were signs, small ones, but I dismissed them. Like how she'd lean into him during conversations, her hand resting just a little too long on his arm. Or the way he started styling his hair differently after she commented he'd look better with a side part. Or how she was always around, dropping by with coffee, texting him memes, tagging him in posts more than she did me. But I trusted them. Both of them. Because in my world, betrayal wasn't even a possibility. We were trying to conceive again, carefully, slowly, with all the medical support we could get. After the second miscarriage, I'd been afraid to hope. Eric had said, "Maybe it's not the right time." I agreed, but I still marked my ovulation days in a soft yellow highlighter in my planner, just in case. We were saving for a trip to Paris. It had been our dream since our 5th anniversary. We'd even opened a little travel fund together, depositing $50 each paycheck into a joint account we jokingly named baguette money. We were good, weren't we? There was one night I still replay. A seemingly normal Tuesday. I'd made chicken piccata, his favorite, and he came home late, looking exhausted. I asked about his day. He smiled, pecked me on the cheek, and said, "Long, I'm gonna shower." But when he came back down, he was different, quieter. He sat next to me on the couch, didn't touch his food, and stared blankly at the TV while it played an old rerun of The Office. "You okay?" I asked gently. He nodded too quickly. "Just tired." I rested my head on his shoulder. He didn't lean back. That was the first time I remember feeling alone, right next to him. But I told myself marriages go through phases, that life gets heavy, especially after loss, that maybe we just needed a weekend away. When I brought it up, he smiled, distracted, and said, "Yeah, maybe. Let's look into it." He never did. Lily, on the other hand, was vibrant as ever. She'd swing by unannounced with her loud laugh and stories of awkward Tinder dates, sprawling across our couch like she owned it. She'd wink at Eric and say, "Don't worry, if you ever screw up, I'm stealing your wife." We'd all laugh. I didn't realize the joke was already halfway true. The day before my birthday, she called me and said she had a surprise. Said to meet her at this cute cafe downtown, that she wanted to treat me to brunch. But when I got there, she was a no-show. I waited 30 minutes, texting her with no response. Finally, I paid for my own latte and left. Later, she texted, "Ugh, so sorry, babe. Got caught up in a work meeting. Can we reschedule?" Something about that felt off. Lily never forgot birthdays, and she never said babe. That wasn't her language. That night, Eric gave me a gift, a scarf, beautifully wrapped. But when I opened it, I realized it was the exact same one Lily had pinned on Pinterest 6 months ago. And I hadn't. I smiled anyway. Said thank you. Pretended not to notice the tiny lipstick smudge on the receipt tucked inside. Red. Always red. Still, I didn't let the thought grow. I was too invested in the life I thought we had. Because in my mind, love, real love, was stronger than suspicion. And the people closest to you were the safest ones. Eric wasn't cold. That's what made it harder. He still texted me, "Love you," every day. Still filled the gas. Still showed up for dinners with my parents. But it was all muscle memory. Love on autopilot. The feeling had vanished, but the motions remained. That's when I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. Present, seen, but no longer felt. I remember one Sunday morning, walking into the kitchen and catching them laughing over something on his phone. Lily was seated on the counter, legs swinging like a teenager. Eric stood too close. When I walked in, they flinched, just slightly, like I'd interrupted something. I asked what was so funny. Eric said, "Oh, just a dumb meme." Lily chimed in, "Nothing important, don't worry." That's when the seed finally rooted. Still, I watered it with denial. Because to admit it would mean admitting that my entire life, my marriage, my friendships, my home, might have been a lie. And that truth was too terrifying to hold. So I smiled. I laughed. And that night, I cried in the shower so quietly that even the tiles didn't echo back. They say betrayal doesn't start with a knife in the back. It starts with the slow erosion of trust. With smiles that don't reach the eyes. With hugs that last a beat too long. With secrets passed in silence. I held on to the belief that love, real love, couldn't just disappear. That people don't change overnight. That Eric loved me. That Lily would never. That assumption, that the people you love most are incapable of hurting you, would become the very belief that shattered me. Because betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it rewrites your entire past. It happened on a Tuesday. That quiet, unassuming day of the week when nothing significant is supposed to occur. Eric had left early for a supposed client breakfast. Blazer on, breath mint in, cologne just a little stronger than usual. I kissed his cheek like I always did. He didn't meet my eyes. I taught class as usual that day. Fractions, reading circles, spilled juice boxes. The kind of chaos that normally gave me a sense of control. But something hung in the back of my mind like a fog I couldn't name. I checked my phone between periods. No text from Eric. No meme from Lily. Just silence. Until 2:17 p.m. That's when I got the message. From an unknown number. You deserve to know the truth. He's been with her for months. They were at the Ritz last night. Ask him about room 804. I read it twice. 3 times. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might throw up in front of the kids. I stepped into the hallway, hands shaking, and stared at the words again. I knew who her was without needing a name. Lily. It couldn't be real. It had to be a prank. Some cruel joke. But deep down, in that place you try to pretend doesn't exist, I already knew. When I got home, Eric's car was in the driveway. I stood there for a full minute before going in. I could hear the shower running upstairs. His travel mug sat empty on the counter. I opened the fridge. 2 leftovers missing. Not just his. Lily's favorite coconut curry was gone too. I stood frozen, one hand on the refrigerator door, eyes unfocused. My body was upright, but everything inside me had slumped to the floor. He came downstairs in sweats, towel around his neck, rubbing his hair dry. When he saw me, he stopped short. "Hey," he said, like nothing was wrong. Like we were still us. "Where were you last night?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "Room 804, I said. Quiet, controlled. Like if I whispered it, the world wouldn't shatter. His face changed. Not guilt, not immediately. First it was fear. Then something worse. Relief. Like he didn't have to lie anymore. He sat down on the edge of the couch and looked at his hands. "I didn't want you to find out this way." I didn't cry. Not then. I stared at him like I was watching a stranger rehearse lines from a badly written play. "How long?" "A few months," he said. "Since when?" He hesitated. "Since before the last miscarriage." And that's when my knees gave out. I sank to the floor, slowly, carefully, like my bones were glass and the truth had cracked every single one. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to claw at the air. But instead I sat there, mouth open in a silence so loud it hurt. He came toward me, reaching out like that would fix anything. "Don't," I whispered. "But Alyssa, don't touch me." He stopped. Hands in the air, like I was a bomb and he'd triggered the countdown. I spent the next 2 days in bed. No work, no calls, no Lily. Just darkness and the hum of the ceiling fan spinning overhead like time mocking me. I stared at the wall until my eyes burned, cried until I had nothing left. Then cried some more, this time quieter, deeper, the kind of crying that doesn't make noise. My body felt like a costume I didn't belong in. I stopped brushing my hair. I didn't eat. I barely drank water. I deleted our wedding photos from my phone, then panicked and restored them. I'd stare at the screen, zooming in on our smiles, trying to decode the moment it all began to fall apart. Was it my fault? Was I not enough? Had I pushed him away with all the grief, the failed pregnancies, the sobbing behind closed doors? I was ashamed, not just of him, of myself, for trusting, for loving, for not seeing it, for inviting Lily to every dinner, for giving her a key to my home, for telling her my fears while she was holding the hand of the man who created them. But I also felt rage. It started as a whisper in the back of my mind. Then it grew louder. Lily had looked me in the eyes, shared wine on my back porch while I cried about Eric working late. She'd hugged me at the memorial for my dad, held my hand during ultrasounds. She had stood beside me at the altar on my wedding day, the same altar she was now planning to stand at with my husband. What kind of person does that? What kind of person looks at the life you've built and decides they're entitled to it? I didn't call her. I couldn't. Every time I tried, my hands would start to shake and my throat would close. But I stalked her socials. Her Instagram had gone private. She'd changed her profile photo to a sunset. Like even her face was too ashamed to show itself. Eric texted me 2 days after the truth came out. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. This just happened. We didn't plan it." The words blurred as I stared at them. Didn't plan it? Like love was an accident. Like falling into my best friend's bed was a pothole he tripped into. "We want to tell people soon. Please don't make this harder than it already is." That was the last straw. Make this harder? The man who had watched me bleed in silence, who had held my hand during D&Cs, who had promised forever, was now asking me to make it easier for him to marry the woman who stole my life. I threw the phone across the room. It cracked. I didn't care. I screamed into a pillow. I punched the bed. I pulled my wedding dress from the closet and let it fall to the floor like it was nothing, like it meant nothing, and maybe it didn't anymore, because I didn't recognize the woman who wore it. I didn't know who I was without them, without my best friend, without my husband. Just Alyssa. Just the empty echo of a woman rebuilding herself from rubble. That night, I sat on the floor in the bathroom, knees pulled to my chest, when something shifted. It wasn't strength. Not yet. It was awareness. This was the moment all the books talk about. The collapse before the rise, the death before the rebirth. And it terrified me. But it also made me feel something I hadn't felt in weeks. Choice. I couldn't undo what they did, but I could decide who I'd become next. I used to think rock bottom would look dramatic. Mascara-streaked cheeks, broken wine bottles, screaming in the rain. But the truth is quieter. It's waking up and not remembering what day it is. It's eating cereal out of a mug at 3 p.m. and realizing you haven't spoken to anyone in 3 days. The days blurred. My PTO ran out. I called in sick more times than I should have. My classroom stayed empty while substitute teachers took over. I didn't care. Couldn't care. The version of me who organized reading lists and parent-teacher nights felt like a ghost. Someone I used to play on weekends. I tried therapy. Twice. The first woman was sweet, but used phrases like, reframe the pain, which made me want to scream. The second therapist had kind eyes and a sharper tongue. She didn't let me spiral. Her name was Marta, and she had this way of tilting her head and asking questions that pierced like arrows. "What part of you misses them?" she asked in session 3, and I broke. Because I did miss them, both of them. That was the sick part. I missed Lily's stupid movie recommendations. I missed Eric bringing me tea when I had cramps. I missed the idea of what we were, even if it was a lie. Marta didn't shame me for that. She let me cry, then handed me tissues without comment. That silence was louder than any advice. But healing wasn't linear. I drank too much wine some nights. I downloaded Tinder just to feel something, then deleted it after a string of gross messages from strangers who thought, "You up?" was a personality. I tried journaling, hated every word I wrote. There was a week I convinced myself I should move. Change cities, change names, become someone else entirely. I looked up rentals in Asheville, even booked a Zillow tour. Then I remembered I still had a mortgage to finish paying. Alone. I stopped going to baby stores. Couldn't walk past the onesies without choking on grief. One morning, I saw Lily's car in the grocery store parking lot. I froze in place behind my steering wheel. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. I sat there watching, wondering if she'd come out alone. She didn't. Eric followed, pushing the cart. Laughing at something she said. He touched her back, the same way he used to guide me through crowds. I sank down, out of sight. Stayed like that for 15 minutes until they left. When I finally went inside, I forgot what I needed. Wandered the aisles aimlessly, left with only a pack of gum. That night, I broke my silence and called my sister, Meredith. We hadn't spoken in months, not since I missed her engagement dinner. She answered on the second ring. "Alyssa?" I didn't say anything, just cried. She came over that night, holding Chinese takeout and a 6-pack. She didn't lecture me. just sat on the floor and handed me egg rolls like they were medicine. "You don't have to be okay yet," she said, mouth full. "You just have to not disappear." I laughed, then cried again. That was the first real laugh since it all collapsed. But grief has a way of pretending to leave, only to ambush you again. A few weeks later, I went back to work. I thought I was ready. I wore my favorite blazer, applied mascara, and packed a salad I knew I wouldn't eat. I told myself this was the beginning of something new. My students welcomed me back with wide eyes and cautious smiles. A few drew me little cards that said, "We missed you, Miss Bryan," and "You're the best." For the first 2 periods, I held it together. Then, during lunch duty, I overheard 2 younger teachers whispering in the faculty lounge, "She's the one whose husband ran off with her friend, right?" God, yeah. I heard they're already planning a wedding. That poor woman. But they didn't see me. I left my lunch on the table and went straight to the bathroom. Sat in the last stall, shaking. So much for healing. I called Marta the next day. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "It's okay to fall apart again. That's how we find the pieces worth keeping." Later that week, I found a message from Lily in my inbox. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I just want you to know I never meant to hurt you. I was broken too. Eric and it just happened. I hope one day you can forgive me. No apology, just justification." I didn't reply. I blocked her. That was the sacrifice. Letting go of the last bit of history we shared, of the girl I once trusted with everything. It wasn't just grief. It was a funeral for the version of me that believed love meant safety, that best friends were sacred, that marriage was unshakable. And maybe that version needed to die, because something else was forming in her place. Something quieter, stronger, wiser. I wasn't healed, but I wasn't gone either. And that, for the first time, felt like enough. Healing didn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It came in slow waves, almost invisible at first. A full night of sleep, an afternoon walk without crying, reorganizing my kitchen drawers not because I had to, but because I wanted to. After months of circling my own pain, something inside me began to shift. Not dramatically, just a quiet return to myself. I started with small things. I painted the guest room a warm, sunlit yellow, not for a baby, not for anyone else, but for me. I filled it with plants, a small reading chair, and a woven rug I found at a flea market. It became my sanctuary. Then I signed up for pottery classes at a local studio. I was terrible at first. My first bowl looked like it had been stepped on mid-spin. But the clay didn't care. It yielded, molded, softened under my hands. Something about shaping something new from something broken felt sacred. Marta noticed the change. "You're not spiraling anymore," she said during session 10. "You're building." I nodded. Brick by brick. I stopped drinking wine alone, cut back on social media, started cooking again. Real meals, messy ones, food that filled my house with warmth instead of silence. I also reconnected with my sister. We made Sunday brunch a tradition. Eggs, pancakes, and unfiltered honesty. Some weeks we didn't talk about them at all. Others, I let my rage spill over the edge of the coffee mug, and she didn't flinch. My classroom became more than a job again. I started arriving early, decorating the bulletin boards with spring pastels. My students noticed. One of them, a quiet girl named Lucy, left me a sticky note that said, "You smile different now. It's real." That note lived on my desk for weeks. One afternoon in April, I ran into a friend from college at the West Side Market. His name was Jason. He'd been a year ahead of me in the education program. We chatted about mutual friends, teaching burnout, and how overpriced avocados had become. He didn't mention Eric or Lily, just asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I said yes. Not because I was ready for love again, but because it didn't feel like an escape. It felt like curiosity. Jason was kind, steady, a quiet talker who listened more than he spoke. We went for coffee, then hikes, then art galleries. There were no fireworks, and that's what made it feel safe. He didn't try to rescue me. He just sat beside me in the aftermath and let me be whoever I was that day. There was one night, sitting on my porch, when he asked, "Do you still love him?" I didn't lie. "I don't know," I said. "But I don't need him anymore." That mattered more. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since undergrad. Journaling, mostly. But one day, I wrote a full essay about betrayal, womanhood, and finding yourself again in the cracks of abandonment. I submitted it to a local women's magazine on a whim. They published it. And just like that, I remembered that I still had a voice. The essay led to a small podcast interview, which led to an invitation to speak at a local event for women navigating divorce and loss. I stood in front of 30 strangers and told my story, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Afterward, one woman hugged me and whispered, "I thought I was the only one." I realized something then. My pain had been private, but my healing could be shared. So I started a blog, The New Alyssa, and people came. Women from all over, some betrayed by lovers, others by life, who needed someone to say, "You're not broken, you're becoming." It gave me purpose again. One morning in early May, I stood in my garden with a cup of chamomile tea, sunlight warming my bare feet. The wind moved through the tulips I'd planted weeks earlier. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt peace. Not the kind you fake at dinner parties. The kind that settles in your bones when you've survived something that was meant to destroy you. That's when the email arrived. Subject line: Eric and Lily, wedding invitation. My breath caught. I opened it. It was digital, sleek, elegant, minimal. Their faces side by side, fake laughter, white font over a blurred vineyard backdrop. "You are invited to celebrate the union of Eric Thompson and Lily Ann Brooks." I laughed. Actually laughed. They invited me. Like I was some distant cousin or high school acquaintance. Like I hadn't lived the part of the story they now pretended didn't exist. Attached was a link to RSVP. Yes. No. And one option that made me pause. Leave a message for the couple. I stared at it for a long time. Did I want revenge? Not yet. But I felt something stirring. Not bitterness, but readiness. Because sometimes the best stories don't end when they break. They wait, and then they rise. The church was beautiful. Too beautiful almost. The kind of venue you book to convince yourself that everything is pure, sacred, real. White roses lined the aisle. Pale linen ribbons fluttered from every pew. A violinist played something soft and romantic, something meant to sound like forever. The parking lot buzzed with guests filing in, compliments trailing behind them. "She looks radiant." They're such a power couple. I'm just glad Eric found happiness again. I stood by my car, hands steady, heart calm. I wore a fitted navy dress, elegant, simple, with no trace of the woman they expected me to be. No tears, no drama, just presence. In my clutch were two things: his ring and an envelope. The invitation had come with full access: RSVP, guest list, venue details. Their arrogance astounded me. Either they thought I was too broken to show, or they genuinely believed they'd done nothing wrong. I didn't come for revenge, not in the way people imagine. I came for the silence, the kind that speaks louder than any outburst ever could. Inside, the guests began to hush as the music changed. I slipped in quietly through the side door, my heels muffled by the thick carpet. No one noticed me at first. They were too busy craning their necks to see the bride. Lily entered with slow, poised steps, her gown flowing like a dream she probably thought she stole from me. Her bouquet matched the ones she helped me pick out years ago, back when we used to talk about my wedding. And there he was, Eric, hair neatly styled, tie adjusted, smile rehearsed. He didn't see me. Not yet. But he would. The ceremony began. The officiant welcomed everyone, spoke of love, commitment, honesty, words that tasted bitter now. Then, right before the vows, I stepped forward. Not quickly, not loudly. Just one step after another, the echo of my heels growing louder with every inch of that aisle. People turned. A few gasped. One woman whispered my name. Eric's head snapped toward me. His face changed instantly. First confusion, then dread, then fear. I walked until I stood directly in front of them. Neither moved, neither spoke. Lily's eyes were wide, lips parted like a question was forming but couldn't land. Eric looked at me like I was a ghost he thought he'd buried. I took a breath, reached into my clutch, held out the ring, the one he left in a drawer the night he moved out. He hesitated, then slowly extended his hand. I dropped it in his palm. The metal clicked softly against his skin. Then I held up the envelope. "I thought you'd want to know who else you left behind," I said. Lily's hands trembled. She took the envelope. No screaming, no theatrics. Just a beat of silence so dense you could feel the air shift. She opened it, saw the test, the date, the result. Her hand flew to her mouth. Eric looked at it next. His eyes scanned the lines. He paled. "You," he started. I didn't let him finish. I turned to Lily. Her face was crumbling. "I trusted you," I said softly. "With everything. And still, I hope when you look in the mirror years from now, you see not who you are today, but who you could have been." That was all. Nothing cruel. Just truth, the kind that doesn't need a raised voice to burn. I turned and walked back down the aisle. No one stopped me. No one called my name. But I heard the whispers swell behind me. A murmur of disbelief, discomfort, shame. And I knew it wasn't mine anymore. Outside, the sun had come out. I walked into the light like it was waiting for me. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt empty and full at the same time, like I'd finally laid something to rest. A guest came running after me, an older woman I recognized from Eric's side of the family. She looked at me, unsure. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear I didn't know." I nodded. "I believe you." And I did. Because now, the truth belonged to more than just me. They'd have to carry it too. The weight of what they did. The child they never asked about. The woman they underestimated. Later that evening, I sat on my porch with Jason. I hadn't told him I went. Not until I got back. He handed me a cup of tea. "You okay?" he asked. I looked out at the horizon, the last colors of sunset painting the sky. "I think I am," I said. "Did they say anything?" I shook my head. Didn't need them to. We sat there in silence. Not awkward, not heavy, just peaceful. Like the kind of silence that comes after a storm finally ends. There's a calm that comes after the wave breaks. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives quietly, like the way morning light slips across a kitchen floor, unnoticed until it's warming your feet. That's how peace returned to me. Gradually, patiently. Weeks passed, then months. Spring melted into summer. The tulips in my garden gave way to wildflowers. I stopped counting days since the wedding. Stopped checking Lily's social media. Stopped wondering what they said after I walked out of the church with their illusion crumbling behind me. I had no desire to know. Some stories don't need epilogues. Some wounds don't scar. They simply close. I spent more time in the yellow room. I added a record player in the corner. Jason helped me hang string lights. It became the room where I could breathe, where I wrote, read, danced in socks. Sometimes I'd sit there barefoot, legs tucked under me, windows open, and realize hours had passed without thinking about them at all. That was freedom. Teaching felt good again. My students laughed more. So did I. I led a spring poetry unit where each kid wrote about something they'd lost and something they'd found. When I read their work, I realized I'd written 1,000 versions of the same lesson on my own skin. Loss and finding, grief and rebirth. One night, I found an old draft of a letter I'd written but never sent. It was to Lily. "I don't hate you. I think that's what hurts most. Hate would be easier to carry. Instead, I just see the girl who used to pluck my eyebrows in college while we cried over bad dates. I see the woman who held my hand in a parking lot after I lost my second pregnancy, and I wonder if you miss her too. I folded the letter and placed it in a box of things I no longer needed. Some truths aren't meant to be spoken aloud. Some forgiveness doesn't require a door to open. It just requires the decision to stop knocking. Jason never pushed. Never asked for more than I could give. Sometimes he'd come over with groceries and a sleepy smile. Sometimes we'd sit on my porch and say nothing for hours. He didn't fix me. He just held space for the version of me that was learning how to stay. We weren't in love yet, but we were something honest, something safe, and that was enough. One Saturday morning, I drove to the lake by myself, brought a thermos of coffee, a journal, and a beach towel. I watched the waves move, steady, unbothered, ancient. It hit me then. Life doesn't stop for our heartbreak. It moves forward whether we're ready or not. And maybe that's the miracle. Because one day, you realize you've moved with it. I wrote a piece titled, "The Weight I Gave Back." It was about letting go of things people never asked you to carry and returning to yourself without apology. It got picked up by a national online publication. My inbox flooded with messages from women who saw themselves in every line. Some were in the thick of betrayal. Others had been out of the fire for years, but still smelled the smoke. I responded to each one, not with advice, but with truth. You will not stay broken. You will become. That line became the tagline for a series of workshops I started leading. Small, local circles of women sitting in church basements or rec rooms, telling their stories without shame. We cried. We laughed. We rebuilt. And I didn't hide my story. I didn't weaponize it either. It simply became part of my mosaic, one tile in the life I was slowly reclaiming. One afternoon, while packing away old files, I found the sonogram I'd hidden at the bottom of a drawer. The faint outline, the heartbeat I once heard. I didn't cry. I just placed it in a frame, not as a shrine to what was lost, but as a reminder of what I carried and survived. Not all motherhood looks the same. Not all love ends with a shared last name. Some of it ends in silence. Some of it ends, and that's enough. That night, Jason came over with lemon pasta and a small bouquet of daisies. "You look like peace," he said, setting the table. I smiled. "I feel like it." We ate with the windows open, music playing low, the sun setting slow and soft. After dinner, I stepped into the garden barefoot, watering the lavender. Fireflies blinked in the grass. The wind smelled like honeysuckle. I looked up at the stars and said, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, just to the moment, to the stillness, to the woman I'd become, because she was worth everything it took to find her. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, or if you've ever been through something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters here. Stories like this remind us how powerful healing can be, even after the deepest betrayals. So if you felt something, if it stayed with you, go ahead and hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to Velvet Revenge for more emotional stories that speak to the heart. This community is built on connection, and I'm so glad you're part of it. Until next time, take care of yourself.